So today I'm going to be talking about 3 rules that'll change your staff, your employees, your team literally overnight. And the trick is the rules apply to you. And the goal of this time frame is to share a significant training, but then to have a significant amount of time for you to bring up your issues in general. What is the thing that you're facing right now in your leadership or your business challenges? And I'll give you some answers. And it's not because I'm smart; it's because I have gray hair. I don't think there's anything that could come up in a firm that I haven't seen before. And every time I've seen it before, I figure out how to fix it, create a training around it, and then I'll be able to offer that to you. So today, let's just look at my PowerPoint here, and you'll see that we're dealing with 3 rules that change your staff instantly, but the rules apply to you. The thing that you're going to learn is going to increase your personal power, and quite frankly, it's good for any relationship. Clearly, it has immense power in a leadership role because there's power in that leadership role. But the concept applies at home. I've seen so many relationships that were benefited by a person implementing these 3 rules. And the first, I need to build the case for it. I need to build the foundation for it. I need to build the backdrop so that we can understand it more clearly. And the first psychological component to understand is this: what affects the mind affects the body. I have done this little trick so many times. I'll have an audience and I'll tell them just to imagine squeezing a lemon in their mouth. And even as I do that to you right now, your saliva probably begins to flow if you're actually imagining that lemon. Or I'll tell people just to close their eyes and imagine a feather getting closer and closer and closer to their nose. And so it's almost touching, and then it begins to touch. And I wish I could see all of you right now. And by the way, if you want to open up your window, I mean your camera, that's fine. I like to see people because I would love to see you scratching your nose right now, because that's what can happen. And it's not because it's really there. There's no lemon in your mouth. There's no feather on your nose. It's because of what's happening in your mind. What affects the mind affects the body. And yet it's got to be something that you believe. If you say there's no lemon, there's probably no saliva either. This is why positive affirmations need to be believed and not just put on sticky notes around the place. I've heard people do this. You maybe have done it yourself, and I don't mean to be critical about it, but you take the concept where you put on these little sticky notes. I am wealthy. I am handsome. I am beautiful. I have abundance. And you put them all over the place. And what happens at a subconscious level is your subconscious argues with you. I am wealthy. Your subconscious goes, no, you're not. I am handsome. Not so much. And so if your positive affirmations are not believed, they don't return a positive investment. In fact, they can be demeaning. They can be belittling. They can be destroying of your confidence, because the subconscious is more powerful than your conscious. So you must believe your affirmations, or believe in the possibility of those affirmations. But the bottom line is, and the first point is, what affects the mind affects the body. What's going on right now in your body, your attitude, your behavior, everything that's going on is starting right there in your mind. Your perspective and belief dictate your attitude and your behavior. Now, what this means is your beliefs, your mind, your perspective can change how you interact with other people. I'm going to just put this like this for now, just so I can talk to you. This can have powerful ramifications in your life. I read a study when I was getting my master's in psychology about restaurants, where they took the same exact restaurants with the same exact, all the restaurants had to maintain the same food, the same chef, same staff, everything was the same except for one thing. They took customers and they would come in, and this particular few days, the restaurant was pristine, it was clean, it was nice music playing, etc. And then the exact same food, same chef, same staff, same building, same facility, they changed things a little bit. Just a little bit. They took the pictures and just put them askew just a little bit. There was a wad of paper on the floor, a little bit of lint on this windowsill on the window by some of the tables. And each experiment had the people rate the taste of the food as an experiment. The taste was rated as less desirable in the second experiment, where people perceived that the restaurant wasn't as clean, wasn't as nice. Your programming that can occur can get stuck in your mind, and it messes you up. I'll never forget. I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. My two brothers and I, we looked like triplets, even though we were a year apart. My mom would dress us up to look alike, and we, the three little Truby boys, would go into churches in Northern California and we'd sing. And we were dang cute, I'll tell you that. I don't know if we could sing well, but we sure looked good. And we were asked to go sing at this little tiny church. It took an hour and a half to get out to the middle of nowhere. It was like a potbelly stove. I still remember it. There were like 7 people there. And there was a missionary that came to speak to those people that day. And that missionary took a liking to me, and he sat by me. And I'm not going to tell you what nationality he was, because I'm going to tell you this. I'll just say it, stunk. Oh, it was horrible. And I was a little boy. I couldn't leave. And I was in misery. And smell is a pretty strong sense of memory. And so from that day on, I realized as I was older in life that I had a misconception of, I had a resistance to, I had a repulsion to that particular nationality because of that missionary sitting beside me at that little tiny church in a place called Petrolia. Now, what happens when things are coming out of our mind is no different than Pavlov's dog. No different. We have conditioned responses. So what's going on here? Let me get my screen back up. What's going on is that when you, let me back up. I'm going to get to be able to drive this better. What's going on is our perspectives and our beliefs are built somewhere, and they get stuck in us, and it affects how we behave and our attitude about other people and other situations. But there's a mirror image of this concept. What if you, and you are, what if you were the conditioned response stimulus to somebody else? What happens then? How you treat someone then becomes their trigger. You're the missionary, so to speak. You're the trigger of their mental beliefs, their conditioned responses that are affecting their attitude and behavior toward you. So how you treat someone actually triggers their perspective and beliefs. You've heard it, I'm sure. You can't get respect unless you give it. You can't get love unless you give it. So when you are treating someone else with respect, you'll get respect back. If you're treating someone else without respect, without giving them respect, you won't get that respect back either. So how you treat someone else triggers their perspective and beliefs, which triggers their attitude and behavior. So you notice this is a mirror image of what's going on. I have experienced this firsthand. Joanne and I were flying first class. We got bumped up because I have 1.3 million miles in United Airlines. And we were flying late at night in first class, and there was this young mother, a Korean mother with a little cute Korean baby. And she and her husband named him Charlie. So here's little tiny Charlie, just a few months old, screaming his head off. Now, this particular situation I'm going to tell you about, I've had happen 12, 15 times. She was upset. She wasn't wanting to disrupt the passengers. Clearly, the passengers were not liking this at all. And Joanne had to get up and go into the restroom. So she said, if you want my husband to help, he's really good with babies. She said, I'll take any help you can give. I took that baby and I had that baby calmed in 30 seconds, literally, because I treated the baby with calm, loving, cuddling embrace. And she was amazed, thrilled. Turns out her husband works for the FBI. I'm sure he did some investigation about me. Turns out she worked for Google. She sent me gifts. It was a pretty cool relationship that was built. And I've done that with dogs. I've done that with horses. When you treat the animal differently than somebody else treats them, that animal treats you differently. I have two sons with dogs that nobody else can touch except for me. And it's not because I'm that great with dogs. It's because I'm talking the other dog's language. I'm treating it differently than with fear. A dog needs to have that strength, that alpha dog. So what's going on? I applied the rules literally to the dogs, horses, and babies that I've held, the rules that I'm going to show you. But these three rules are not natural because we are born with a default mindset. If you're born, and clearly you were, your brain works a certain way. There's things that you don't initially choose. Your brain begins to work. And these three pieces that I'm going to show you next are incredibly important for you to be able to apply the three rules. Because if you are in your default mindset, you cannot apply these three rules. When I worked with companies and taught the leaders, the managers, the owners, how to put these three rules into place, those who stay stuck in their default mindset cannot do it. But those who apply the three rules get instant benefit. So your natural process starts by you learning things, and then they get stuck. You learned what clockwise was, didn't you? And you don't think about it today. I bet none of you wake up in the morning and go, I wonder if we ought to change the way clockwise is. No, because it started and then it continued. And by the way, clockwise started because what came before, clocks were sundials. Clocks were invented in the northern hemisphere. When you stick a stick like a sundial in the northern hemisphere, the shadow goes around clockwise. So that's how we have clockwise. If we invented clocks in the southern hemisphere, clockwise would be different. We wouldn't think anything about it. It continues on because of what was, what is now, what is. Same thing with port and starboard. Some people know. A lot of people know, actually, port is left, starboard right. I ask them, why? And I hear this often. Well, port has four letters, P-O-R-T, L-E-F-T. Okay, do that with right. R-I-G-H-T, starboard, doesn't work. Why it happened, just a quick one. Back in the day when ships were a little bigger than boats and canoes, they had to steer them. And they had to steer them with what was called a steering board because the little paddle wouldn't work anymore. Most people were right-handed. They would put the steering board to the rear right of the ship because they were right-handed mostly. And the steering board on the right side of the ship got corrupted to starboard. And when you come into port, you can't come in on the right side because you'd pin your ability to steer. So you always had to come into port on the left side. There you go. There's your history lesson. That's why port is left, starboard's right. But how come it got stuck? Because no one else thought about, well, we ought to change it. It just starts and gets stuck. And most of what happens in your life, most of your beliefs started that way and they got stuck. So here's my intelligent, brilliant term for this concept. I call it stuckedness. No, please don't applaud. Just recognize that this is just brilliance speaking. Maybe this comes from my or being raised on a cattle ranch. You just get down to the bottom line. Stuckedness. That's the first default that you have in your mind. What you learn, get stuck. What you learn, get stuck. And then there's something else that happens. when you learn and it gets stuck, then where's my book here? This one. Nope. Here it is. Daniel Kahneman. See that book? This is an amazing book. It's very thick, scientific book on what makes people tick. Daniel Kahneman wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. And in that book, he said that when you learn something and it gets stuck, then you experience whizziati. What you see is all there is. Now, do you see how narrow-minded that is? It's like when you learned that a watermelon is a watermelon, you no longer have a menu of choices. That concept, that picture, that green thing is stuck in your mind. It is what it is, and nobody can tell you differently. When I took French in school, I can't speak it very well. In fact, weirdly enough, only 2 phrases stuck. One, est-ce que tes parents vont bien? Which sounds pretty romantic, doesn't it? But all I'm doing is saying, so how are your parents? And then I can do, quelle heure est-il? Which means, what time is it? So I can walk around France and go, hey, how are your parents? What time is it? It doesn't help me at all, but those are the things that I learned. And I also learned that this is le plume, a pen, le plume. Brain that is stuck and whizzy-oddied says, yeah, that's what they call it. It's really a pen. The power of this default mindset is amazing. So when you learn something, it gets stuck. When you get stuck, that's all you can see. And then you experience the anthropomorphic principle. That's not made up. It's a scientific fact. It comes from the anthropomorphic astrophysics and other genres of science that basically says anthropology, morphic. We morph what we see into what we see. So what I learn and get stuck, and it's all I can see, is what you should also believe. The anthropomorphic principle says, this is a pen. You can call it la plume if you want, but in America, it's a pen. I'm going to always see it as a pen. And this is true in all the rights and wrongs that you have in life. Your political, your religious, your business beliefs, your relationship beliefs. You got a ton of right and wrongs. Hey, you didn't wake up one day and choose them necessarily. You were oozed into them as you grew up. You weren't born with any of your beliefs. You learned them all and they get stuck. And the only way they can change is if you choose to change them. So what I'm describing here is the normal, narrow-minded brain function. We all have it. And the reason I say narrow-minded is because it's coming from our perspective. So if you are a leader, an owner, a manager, your perspective is the perspective that you believe other people should be living out. When I've worked with family-owned businesses, the function or dysfunction of the family is overlaid onto the business, and it continues. The founders of a business tend to be perpetuated in their beliefs and their ethics and their values and their direction. And all of that is perpetuated because it got started that way. And it's difficult to change. It's very difficult to change. However, when you do change it, when you do manage it, the world changes around you. We worked with a very large steel fabrication company. I mean, big. They were, thick, huge plates of steel that these enormous machines would fabricate and cut and so on. And there was a manager of the plant floor that was a little insecure, and there were a couple of people that he avoided all the time. And the reason he avoided them is because he believed they should be acting in a certain way. And those of you that have had my training on personality types know that different personality types talk different languages. And the bottom line of this problem that he was having with this employee was a language difference from personality traits. That's all. But he couldn't get along with him. So he avoided. He would walk other places in the plant. Now imagine what that employee felt, always being ignored, always being left out, always being second place. That employee did not treat that manager well because that manager did not treat that employee well. Well, this manager learned what I'm going to show you next. He understood now the basic principles that you understand, and he made a change. And when he changed, the employee changed. So what do we got to do? We've got to come up with a new perspective because we're the trigger of their response. You get that? Oh, that's a quote. We are the trigger of another person's response. So we have to get a new perspective. Why do we need a new perspective? Because what happens in your behavior and attitude comes from your mind. Your mind affects your body. And what's the core issue of the mind? Perspective and beliefs. If you believe something, you're going to act as though that is true. I've used it 117 times. The illustration that is from research about a teacher who had 3 batches of students and was told that each batch of students had different scholastic abilities, and yet all the 3 batches of students had the exact same same ability, scholastic ability, but the grades of the batches of students reflected the teacher's perspective on those groups of people. You get what you expect. You will never have a high-performing team unless you expect to have one. You will never have an abundantly successful business unless you expect to have one. Your perspective limits or propels the world around you. So we've got to come up with a new perspective. How do we do that? You choose a different mindset. You choose, the power of choice, that's a whole other subject I need to deal with someday. That is the greatest power we have. And we go through life victimized by our subconscious mind that has been programmed to believe certain things that are not necessarily, that may not be true. And when that happens, then we behave as though it were true, and then we're the victims. So we've got to choose a different mindset. Because when we choose a different mindset, that creates beliefs that are different, behaviors that are different, and therefore interactions that are different. That manager chose a new perspective, showed him how to do what I'm going to show you, and it made all the difference in the world. He was able to talk to that individual, that employee, and he became connected in a team as they should be. But it came not because the employee changed, it came because the leader changed. There's a whole other subject, you've heard me talk about it, members, that everything that happens in your team, everything, good or bad, you as a leader cause, allow, or perpetuate. You cause or allow or perpetuate everything that's happening. The team does not have the power to do it themselves. So this is pure science. It works with a dog, with a horse, with a baby, with another individual. We choose a different perspective, a different mindset. And that mindset then changes how we interact. So here's the 3 rules. These 3 rules will cause you to think differently and therefore do differently. And the first rule is simple. Now, I know what you're going to do. You're going to go, well, duh. I love teaching does, because when you teach a duh, it's it makes the learning sustainable. I'll never forget the first time I was in literally the biggest architectural firm in the world, training the 3 letters, HOK. It was actually 2 of the letters, one was gone already, but the biggest architectural firm in the world. And I was showing them stuff that I thought was duh. It was like walking out on the Sahara Desert with people carrying water in their hands. And I'm going, here's a cup. And they're going, whoa, this is awesome. And I'm going, that should be a duh. So you're going to look at this and go, duh. But if you remember what I just taught you, this does not come naturally. The first rule, be other-centered. Now, can you guess why that doesn't come naturally? It's because you are stuck, wizzy-oddied, and anthropomorphized. What you've learned gets stuck. What you see is all there is, and the other person should see it the way you do too. So we enter into interactions. We enter into leading our business. We enter into working with new clients or customers. From our perspective, a successful person, especially a successful leader and business owner, is always building the bridge of relationship starting on the opposite bank first. You've got to start on the opposite bank first. What do they need? Where are they coming from? What language are they speaking, personality types? What is their perspective? And in that arena, that's when you are going to make a difference, because that's where you shape what you want to say so that they can hear it. Not just say what you want to say, not just do what you want to do. You are other-centered. This is so powerful in all aspects of life, from love to war. Imagine someone proposing to another individual, and they do it like this. Well, I'm glad we could have this dinner together because I wanted to talk to you about something. I want you to know that I'm a real catch. Yeah, I have a master's in psychology, a PhD in that, and I've been pretty successful in life. I've grown a couple businesses, and I'm pretty wealthy as well. And I've got these great attributes. I'm healthy, and I'm really liked by people. I'm looked up to. Will you marry me? Yeah, that's not going to work, is it? Other-centeredness is you are the love of my life. You make me whole. You I adore. You will make my life worth living. You, will you marry me? From love to war. What is the greatest weapon that we can have in a war? What's the greatest weapon? It's not the biggest tank. It's not the nuclear bomb. It's not the greatest, the fastest airplanes. It's intel. Intel, the intelligence of what that enemy is going to do. It's the same with a football team. That's why they do this when they call a play, so that nobody can see what they're talking about. Intel, being other-centered in love and in war and everything in between, is the most powerful way that you can be successful in life. So what does this look like when you're talking to another individual, your employees? You think, what might they want to hear? I've seen so many times where a leader, a manager, an owner will not talk to the staff about something that they can see. Now, the leader, manager, owner knows what's going on, but they forget that these people might want to have some purpose and context too. So what's the only thing left? Assumptions. So they're not giving the information flow that's needed. What's next? Lead accountable people. Never, ever hold people accountable. Those of you that heard me teach before know what I mean. Others are going, what? We've got to hold people accountable. No. When the quarterback throws the ball to the receiver, the coach does not run down the sidelines and go, you're going to catch the ball, going to catch the ball. I want to make sure I hold you accountable. Nope. That coach watches the receiver be accountable. And if that person won't or doesn't catch the ball, they don't get to play. We'll remind, train, buy them sticky gloves. But if they keep dropping the ball, they don't get to play because they need to be accountable. I work with teams of people who are accountable. It's respectful. When you join a team, this is the role I need you to play. This is what you will own. This is yours. I'm not going to get in your way. Will you own it? Will you be on my team and fulfill that role? That's the way we lead accountable people. Even in a task, it's yours. I'm not going to be micromanaging you. People do not like to be puppets on a string. They want to be empowered and live with some respect. And the third is to manage by agreements. Managing by agreements is not telling people what to do. It's primarily the simple courtesy of saying, will you do blank? Now, there's times when you got to call the play. I get that. But there's other times, most of the time, 98% of the time, when people need to do something and you need to simply ask them. Now, there's some psychological benefit to doing so. When you say, will you do blank? And they say, yes, I will, they take it upon themselves. They own it a bit. There's a degree of ownership. And then you can say, if they're falling short, hey, didn't we agree? And the disciplinary action comes from the agreement level, not the behavior or task level. We've got a whole skill set on accountability. There's a whole process of step up or step out that is so respectful. Most people step up. Large companies, even companies with unions, have used our process, and it works because it's respectful and it causes a person to simply live up to their agreement. Maybe that comes from my cowboy days too. Being honest and keeping your word is a big, big deal. Now, when you do this, when you have this mindset where you're dealing with John or Jane Doe and you're other-centered, therefore you're respectful and you're coming from where their perspective is, you're giving them responsibility that they own, and they're on the same page of agreement, then changes happen immediately. And notice what I said, on the same page. There's a great book called Never Split the Difference. It's by a former FBI agent who did a bunch of serious, life-threatening hostage negotiations. And he has a magical question that he asks the person who is trying to get $15 million in ransom for this person. He'll say these words: how am I supposed to do that? And he does it literally, legitimately, genuinely, and it causes that person to answer the question. And there are stories in that book that you wouldn't believe when he genuinely gets the person on the same page of an outcome. That's what managing by agreements is all about, getting the person on the same page of an outcome. Now, when you put these three rules into place, I'm talking from 40 years of experience, you will get change in your staff overnight, simply because you're treating them differently. You're treating them differently, so you become the stimulus that causes their perspective to change. And when their perspective changes, their attitude and behavior changes. It's a super simple scientific process. Change how you think, it changes how you behave. When you behave differently to somebody else, it changes how they think, and that causes them to behave differently as well. So that's the deal. Those are the three rules that can change your staff overnight, but they're the rules that are applying to you.